If you're talking about radical changes, that's not part of the job description of a pope, see? He's supposed to preserve and hand on intact. Now, here's a big distinction. We can talk, and we better talk, about perhaps a more credible, convincing way of expressing those immutable, timeless truths of the church, because sometimes people tell us they find those things tough to accept or tough to believe. We better think about that. We can't change the what, we can change the how.
That, of course, Cardinal Timothy Dolan. He appeared on Face the Nation this weekend to explain what the Cardinals might discuss as they look forward to picking a new pope. Cardinals met for the first time in Vatican City today, and they took an oath of secrecy and began talking about the conclave that will elect, as you know, a successor to retired Pope Benedict. Cardinals from around the globe gathering at the Vatican for their first meeting in the process of picking a pope.
I cannot predict what is going to happen, but I must say this is a spiritual act which we all, the Cardinals, are privileged to be part of.
Could it be Cardinal Scola of Milan, an Italian frontrunner, or Cardinal Tagle of the Philippines? At 55, he looked a bit like a Boy Scout as he escorted an elderly cardinal. Or what about New York's own Cardinal Dolan? With 115 cardinals expected to vote, there are first getting to know one another, narrowing the field, and discussing big issues facing the Catholic Church. From Cardinal Sandri saying the Church needs to do a better job of reaching out to women, to the weighty topic of sex scandals within the Church. Britain's Cardinal Keith O'Brien, he will not attend the conclave after admitting yesterday, quote, "There have been times that my sexual conduct has fallen below the standards expected of me as a priest, archbishop, and cardinal." Chicago's Cardinal Francis George saying, with all cases, the Church must maintain a zero-tolerance policy and focus on the victims.
As long as it's with them, it's with all of us, and that will last for a long time. So the next pope has to be very aware of this.
While the papal tailor's windows already show the new white vestments ready for a new pope, the Cardinals, they're still no closer to deciding when they will enter the conclave and the secret of voting will begin.
I think we're just feeling our way right now in trying to determine what's the best way for us to proceed. Remember, there are many of us in this conclave who were not in the last one, so this is all uncharted water for many of us.
And for more on what lies ahead, we're very pleased to be joined by Father Mark Vaillancourt. Father Vaillancourt is the president and principal of Kennedy Catholic High School in the Lower Hudson Valley. Father Vaillancourt has traveled to the Vatican when then Archbishop Timothy Dolan was elevated, I should say, to Cardinal. Father, thank you very much. Well, first off, I think anybody who knows, now Cardinal Dolan knows, by the way, if you had him as a client, you'd win any election. He's the best politician, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, as anybody. You can't walk away from the guy without, A, liking him, but believing whatever he's selling. So I know we were joking before in the break here, Dublin has got a betting lines, has him as a 33-1, but any chance that we could see really an American Cardinal, whether it be Dolan or maybe the Boston Cardinal here as the first Cardinal from the U.S., I mean Pope from the U.S.?
Well, I think what you have, it's a more fluid situation now than when Benedict was elected.
Yep.
When Benedict was elected, all eyes were on him. He was the man, he was there, he was the principal homilist, Pope John Paul II's funeral. He was the one who was, again, the principal celebrant before the Cardinals went into conclave. And really, everybody just went away from his performance, if you want to use it that way, as he's the one. There's really not such a clear front runner, if I could use that term.
Yeah.
I do think, though, what they will do is they're going to kind of take an assessment of where the church is at. If they want someone who is a safe bet, someone who is really going to be someone they can feel good about and safe with, they're going to go for a curial insider. Probably Ouellette in Canada is a front runner. He's someone who knows 7 languages. He's a theologian of the highest rank. He's someone who's very well spoken, and he would be very credible, has a lot of gravitas. But I think if they do assess problems in the Vatican, if they think that there are things that need to be cleaned up, if there are problems that have to be dealt with, well, then I think there's kind of like a paradigm shift, and someone like an American and someone like Cardinal Dolan could really come out in front, because I think Europeans and European cardinals in particular, and those involved in running the church and the curial posts, really see that Americans and someone like Dolan would be a hands-on kind of a person, a guy who would go in there, take on the problem, and fix it.
And just, not that we're his rooting squad here, but to give an idea as to how much of a change in a dynamic, to, for example, going from Benedict to a Dolan would be, there would be a perception, and I think it's more than just a perception, but an idea of inclusion. I think so many people, and they talk about the math, we talk about it here, there's declining numbers in the pews, there's declining numbers in the offertory basket, declining numbers of people like you with collars on right now, or women, obviously sisters, and you have parochial schools, God knows, we've seen so many closing, that if they want to stem that, you have to not take the laity for granted, but also outreach more. And I think he'd be, I can't think of a better ambassador for that than him.
I think that swings right back to the view that I put out there. If they really think that we have a communication problem, if they believe that, look, we need to really get the message of the faith, which is 2,000 years old, and get it out there in a way that's relative and relevant, someone like Dolan is very attractive. He's very pastoral in all of his approach. He's a great communicator. He's done wonderful things here in New York, as far as whether it's building up, the priest morale, or really kind of rallying all of the parishes around the archdiocese as we are the church here, and making us feel good about it. You see, that's something that Dolan really is a genius with, making you feel good. We talked about it, about who you are, what you believe. And I think if there is that idea in the conclave that this is really the face of the church that we need today, then I think his odds get markedly better.
And there's a humanistic. You'll see him have a pint, and he'll joke about it. And
great humor.
Absolutely. The one thing I'm surprised by some, I think, credible sources. They say when the doors close, Father, to the conclave, they're going to have as honest a discussion as they probably had, not just about where the church is, but also where it needs to go. And it's not just a pro forma, count the ballots. I'm hearing from people that say, we heard it before in that piece, there has to be a better job of outreach to women in the church or by the church. But also, I know you know this, not a lot of people know, you go back to 13th century, priests were allowed to marry. And that conversation might be back on the table. Is that expecting too much? I'm not talking about women in the priesthood. I'm not talking about changing social positions. I'm talking about even going back to the idea that priests can be married. I mean, in many ways, it's part of the conversation about so many things right now. Do you think that might be part of the dialogue?
If it is, I think it's going to be kind of, it's a marginal piece. It's not something that's going to be front and center.
Right.
What they're going to look at is the state of the church in the world. I mean, the Catholic Church has over 1.2 billion members worldwide. So what might be a very pressing issue for us here in the States, maybe somewhere in the African continent or in Asia, it's not really something that affects them.
But does the church, and I've heard the two different vantage points from this, some say, you know what, I'd rather just have the true believers, not the guys who show up on Easter and Christmas, versus others who say, I know the numbers are growing in Asia and I know they're growing in Africa, but you know what? The money always is coming from Europe and North America here, and that's where we got to do a better job. Absolutely. Do they see that, and of course the abuse scandal is part of the conversation, do they see the church at a real vital crossroads now, or do they think it's just a blip on, the continuum of time?
I don't think anyone is going to take it for granted that it's business as usual. Especially, I would gather in my thoughts that Benedict's resignation is really sent a shockwave through the Cardinals. And they've got to really take a hard look at why this happened, what is really going on. And again, I think it's going to be a paradigm shift if they say we've got some serious problems. They're not going to move to someone who's a very safe bet, who's probably going to be very traditional in his interpretation. They will probably move towards, and again, someone who's like a Dolan, who really, if it's going to be an American, they're all going to line up behind him.
Yep.
And if Europe sees that this is what we need, and we're no longer intimidated by America anymore.
Superpower idea, yeah.
So that kind of leveling of the playing field kind of makes it more
yeah.
plausible.
And I know we got to go to break, but I know if we had a vote, not that certainly I don't, but Dolan, I think they could do a lot worse than if they elevated the Cardinal.
Well, he'd have mine too.
Yeah, absolutely. Father, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
All right, everyone, we'll be right back. Please stay with us.